And Biden is going to Glasgow without a lot of climate runs on the board as well, isn't he, Simon? It's not that easy for Biden either.
No, absolutely it's not easy for Biden. He's talked a very big game, of course, on climate at home, and I think had really hoped that by the time of the G20 and, of course, by the time of Glasgow, the US could point to real initiatives that had made their way through the Congress as a form of moral suasion, building the moral case for US leadership around this. That hasn't happened, and it largely hasn't happened because of one US senator in particular, someone we've talked about a few times before, Kieran. Yeah. Of course, that's Joe Manchin of West Virginia, former governor of that state, the biggest coal-producing state in the United States. And so Biden hasn't got that to point to. He's got a lot of talk and things he can do off his own desk with executive orders and regulation, but a big-ticket item to wave at the rest of the world and say, follow this, he hasn't got.
Stuck in Congress along with his massive infrastructure package.
That's exactly right. And that that is looking increasingly dire. Nancy Pelosi, one of the best vote counters in the history of American politics, is not going to bring this up for a vote until she knows it's getting through the House. And yet again, they've had to, we're not quite ready yet. Next 24 hours could be really key. Handing Biden a win while Glasgow is happening would be very, very good for the US case at Glasgow. But as I said, all eyes on Nancy Pelosi, the most experienced vote counter out there. If she doesn't think the Democrats in Congress can hang together on this, there's no way she's bringing it to the floor. And so we might get right through to the end of Glasgow without Biden getting some good news from back home. And I tend to think that's where it is. I don't think Joe Manchin and frankly, other Democrats are ready to let this game just end yet. There's what is in it for them, offsets, you know, if you will, for their districts in order to vote on something that may not be especially popular. We know it's not at all popular in West Virginia, but some of those marginal House districts as well. Those Democratic members of the House on the edge, a little bit like our Nats here, have an awful lot of negotiating power. And I think the sense is, while there's more to extract, let the game keep going.
Simon, on another matter, away from climate, really interesting developments looming in the Supreme Court in the United States. About to hear arguments in relation to that Texas abortion ban case.
Yeah, so Kieran, there are two sets of cases coming to the Supreme Court around the vexed issue of reproductive rights in the United States. Overnight tonight, our time, the Supreme Court will hear argument out of Texas cases seeking, challenging Texas legislation that takes the limit on an abortion right back to, I think, to about 6 weeks from memory, I think is what that litigation is about. Coming up a month after is a case out of Mississippi that the court has agreed to hear that goes directly at the landmark case that guarantees abortion rights in the United States. And of course, that's Roe v. Wade. And it's the first time in a long time that there's been a head-on car crash, if you will. A state is bringing a case saying Roe is no longer good law. And between the Texas case, and we'll get some signals about the justices' receptivity, how far do they want to go down that road at Texas cases, they're significant. But the main game is that Mississippi case with oral argument set for about a month from now. And so that's an issue that's grinding away in the domestic background as well. And of course, Kieran, all this has sort of got to be read against the context of upcoming primary elections, where this issue on both sides of it will enormously energise partisans on the edges of both sides of American politics. And of course, that kind of energy, always really interesting, as members of Congress are only months away from having to contest primaries to re-win their nomination in order to run again in the general election coming up in November of 22. So that's the other big item that we're tracking in the United States this next week and next month or so.
Yes, such a divisive issue continues to be. Simon Jackman, CEO of the US Study Centre, thank you.